Hello and welcome to the June 1st podcast. My name's Ethan Moriarty, and I'd like to start off by wishing you a Happy New Year and a quick announcement with the recent promotion and co-host of the June 1st podcast, Connor Moriarty, my brother, and more importantly in the context of this podcast, my chase partner. Connor, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. I like the new promotion. And I would like to be on more podcasts if I'm able to be on.
Yeah, so Connor will be on as often as possible. He's still a very busy college student, so studies obviously become first. But nonetheless, Connor's here to kind of keep me grounded in a sense, if we want to put it that way. I can get carried away sometimes, maybe, and Connor's my grounding mechanism, I guess you could say.
Keep you on track if anything goes too much awry.
Yeah, not like I'm causing that much commotion. I like to think I'm pretty much a laid back guy, but sometimes I can, spout off on tangents and stuff. So Connor's there to reel me in and add some more color commentary and a different perspective, per se, in the near future. So, Connor, first off, I want to ask you, what do you look forward to in 2022?
I'm definitely looking forward to the next Chasecation. I can't wait to be out on the plains again. And the first one was very nice, and I can't wait for the second one to be even more fruitful.
Yeah, we're going to definitely get into our Chasecation this year as we will be recapping our 2021 storm chasing season. And we're looking to go bigger and better, obviously, for 2022. And it looks like as though with the long-term model suggestions with the La Nina we're having, that we could have a somewhat active season in the spring. And hopefully that means that we will be out there experiencing some pretty cool storms each and every day that we're out there, and maybe even taking some isolated trips here and there if the setup permits itself and we are able to, schedules permitting, obviously. But it's obviously a good looking sign for storm chasers, and we hope that we have some nice photogenic storms that aren't threatening lives and that we can just simply enjoy them without having to worry about the impacts that they might have.
And also maybe to test our gear if we were able to get it up and running by May. That would be greatly nice.
Not likely given budgetary restrictions right now on my end, but we're making a push for our engineering efforts, which are documented on our YouTube channel, June 1st, which is spelt out JUNE space FIRST. That is the first channel suggestion on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter. I usually post stuff about it. It's been pretty quiet lately. I've been taking a break from it, just kind of as it's been a crazy time of year in terms of the holidays and work and all that.
And the recent storm outbreaks causing a massive amount on Twitter that I don't want to get into either.
Yeah, so I think it's just a matter of, finding a little bit more time before the spring to work on it a bit and help our efforts advance, I guess you could say, and advance the scientific understanding of what we're looking to achieve in terms of researching supercells. But besides that, 2021 was a very fruitful year for us and probably our most expansive storm chasing season to date. And we covered a lot of ground. We drove almost 10,000 miles this year on chases. I started keeping an accurate log this year to really make sure that we had a good idea of what we were doing storm chasing wise, and just kind of keeping tabs on everything because that's who I am. I'm an engineer. I like quantifiable data. So the season started off pretty early. I think one of my earliest chases to date with a March setup in Vermont, which is very atypical, especially that far north. And nice bow echo style storm. I got pretty close to a tornado. Didn't see it. Some locals in Middlebury, Vermont did get some pictures of it though. But it was a QLCS type tornado, quasi-linear convective system, which means that it's a big line storm, which, usually rides along a cold front or some sort of strong forcing mechanism and advances it along. So it was a pretty fun event just to get the feet wet back into chasing terms. It was the first chase in our chase vehicle, the 2019 Subaru Crosstrek, so our now second chase vehicle, technically my third, but as a team, our second chase vehicle. And boy, I thought it would be a good idea to roll down the window with the advancing, surging outflow, I guess you could say, from the storm, gusting at like 50, 60 miles per hour, shaking the car. And I opened up my driver's side window, which was the side that was being hit by the wind. And my car that I just got a week ago was inundated with water in a matter of seconds. So
That'll certainly depreciate the value.
yeah, I mean, it's a storm chasing vehicle, so it gets the job done. And I bought that car with mostly with storm chasing in mind, to be honest. I wanted it to be able to haul gear. I can put the seats down in the back to sleep in the back if we need to. And it's a workhorse, and that's why I did not buy it brand new off the lot. I got it certified pre-owned. It already had 11,000 miles on it, but we're about to cross 36,000 miles in the next coming days here. Probably I'm at like 36 or 35, 950, something like that. So put a lot of miles on it on its first year, but only about 10,000 of which were actually storm chasing. Moving on to the next event, which was April 22nd, another close encounter with a New England tornado, this time in Connecticut. I've chased this storm, more linear style storm again, typical Northeast stuff, over the Hudson River Valley in New York, eventually into Connecticut, and came across some tornado damage, eventually classified as an EF0 tornado in South Kent, Connecticut. And then got a little quiet as I finished up my schooling at Quinnipiac University, and then not long after that, we hit the road for the Great Plains, and our first chase was on May 17th in the Texas Panhandle, which was a moderate day. Connor, you want to talk a little bit about the drive down there? Because that was something that was definitely the most grueling part of the trip, I'd say.
Yeah, we talked about a little bit of that on my debut episode, plugging the additional episodes of the June 1st podcast, but it was definitely a slog of a drive. We didn't stay up straight for 28 hours, but we drove straight for 28 hours, and we each either drove or slept in 3-hour shifts as we really got into the heat of it near like Pennsylvania and Ohio. Basically, all we just did, we drove for 3 hours, we pulled off to get gas or like food or energy drinks or something, and we would switch and we would keep going. And we did that up until Amarillo, Texas from Massachusetts. So
yeah, it was a long slog, that's for sure. And I didn't think we were even going to we thought it was going to be like a 2-day trip. You know, we were going to get a hotel or something that first night. And we were in Erie, Pennsylvania. We had driven from Western Massachusetts. And a lot of people maybe don't realize this, but New York is a super long state when you're going from east to west across. And it takes about 6 hours to get through New York. So we got through New York and crossed into that little tab that sticks up on the western part of Pennsylvania onto Lake Erie there. And we got to Lake Erie, and the Storm Prediction Center issued a moderate risk for western Texas around the Lubbock area. And we decided to commit right then and there to making it to Texas for that chase day, which meant driving throughout the night. And we did, but it, like Connor said, it was a pretty taxing toll on us. And then by the time we got there, we were probably pretty sleep deprived and made some questionable decisions in terms of targeting some northern storms in the Texas Panhandle, when in reality, we probably could have made it to Lubbock, Texas, looking back on the timing of the event. But at the time, we didn't want to be like scrambling to keep up with it. And I think we were just definitely sick of driving at that point.
yeah, we were done. We were just done. Like the stationary supercell that we ended ourselves upon was, I don't know, we just sat there for hour and a half, 2 hours.
I wouldn't say it was even that long, maybe an hour.
Okay, an hour. But whatever, that hour was definitely a good hour of just us sitting there, you know, just being stationary for once instead of
moving
and driving and having to concentrate on the road while being sleep deprived. That was an experience and a half, and it was a good break from it.
Yeah, exactly. So we went to Wichita Falls for the night and slept, and probably got some of the best sleep of our lives ever in a hotel. That's for sure. After the slog of a drive that we did, and woke up the next morning and kind of looked at the models. And we originally went towards Wichita Falls because we weren't sure if we were going to have to chase the kind of more, I guess, remnant style setup that was taking place in eastern Texas. We didn't really want to do that because of it would have just been not necessarily the most fun chasing in terms of it being
both meteorologically and geographically.
Yeah.
It's more of the jungle of Texas, and it was most likely to be an MCS.
Yeah, and we kind of knew the following days the following days after this event was going to be up near the high plains in Colorado or Nebraska, Kansas. That's what it looked like. So we knew that we didn't want to be so far that it was going to take us a real long time to get up that way. West Texas up towards Colorado is already a pretty long drive as it is. So we wanted to try to minimize that as possible. And we knew that there was going to be some sort of dry line set up on the day of the 18th. And sure enough, there was a 2% tornado risk issued by the SPC. And it looked like that there was going to be either, an option south of Lubbock, or it was going to be up near the New Mexico, Texas border. And we decided to do the southern option ultimately. I know a lot of people originally did the New Mexico option, but it ended up being a great chase day in terms of a long-lived supercell. The people that were on the New Mexico border ended up coming all the way down to this supercell and still being on it for multiple hours. It was, like I said, a long-lived supercell. We were probably on it for 6 hours or so, and it was slow-moving, and it was just a great chasing experience and the most beautiful supercell I had seen up to that point.
Yeah, that was definitely our first experience with a Great Plains, real, I don't know if I should say beefy supercell, but that was a supercell that actually, you could categorize as, a good tornadic supercell.
Yeah, I mean, the tornado it did produce was pretty weak. It was a very briefly lived, I don't even think it was rated, tornado north of La Mesa, Texas. We got a brief shot of that, and the main condensation of it was so thin. It was just a quick little needle, and it was on the ground for maybe 2 minutes or so, not even. And we barely got the rope out phase of it. But, it was just nice to kind of get out and experience Great Plains chasing for the first time. Obviously, on the 17th, we were up north. Everyone was further south, so we didn't really see any other chasers. It was literally just us up there on that northern storm. But on the 18th, everyone was on this storm. It was the clear target of the day for that part of Texas, and it produced, and we saw so many great chasers out there, and it just felt nice to be a part of, this greater chasing community ultimately.
Oh, yeah, we saw so many people that you could probably recognize if you're a storm chaser out there.
Not even that. It's just seeing other people. It's not even the big name chasers that excited me. It was just seeing this big communal experience taking place. Everyone just enjoying the storm. It wasn't really threatening anything. It was just kind of meandering along. Yeah, I was dropping some pretty big hail in the hail core, but it was just a great time just to actually experience Mother Nature that up and close.
Yeah, we talked to some people who you probably or people probably wouldn't recognize, but yeah, we made good friends out of in the long run, and just a whole communal experience. People who we didn't meet, but we just tagged along because we're both storm chasers. Yeah, it's a really great experience, and that was probably what got me into solidifying storm chasing as a hobby of mine.
Yeah, for sure. And later that night, we went back towards Lubbock, Texas to spend the night, and then we ultimately met up at an Applebee's there were a couple chasers there, but we sat down with Thomas Nepshield, and that's where we first met actually in person, and we ended up chasing a lot of the same stuff for the coming days and hanging out a lot of the times before the storm set up. So Thomas was a guest on the podcast for episode 4, if I'm not mistaken, so check out that episode. He's a great photographer and up-and-coming storm chaser. So then next morning was a commute day. Nothing really exciting of note, except for the fact that we came up through the panhandle of Texas and then drove through New Mexico past Sierra Grande, which is an extinct volcano or dormant volcano, probably extinct if I had to guess. And then went through the Raton Pass on I-25 there, and our way up into Colorado through Trinidad and Colorado Springs, and it was amazing. This is the first time that I'd ever been in Colorado, and it was amazing to see just the stark difference between the Rocky Mountains and the plains. It's amazing to me. If you've never been, it's honestly incredible, where you're looking to your east and it is flat as a pancake, and then you look west and it's just, it's flat, and then all of a sudden you're having, multiple 1,000-foot difference. And you just see these great peaks covered with snow. And it's just like, it's such a surreal place and so beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's wow. I mean, going to Colorado for the first time, like I remember distinctly like bending like as we just got into Colorado through like the mountain pass, and you could just see the Rockies all along a line. And
Yeah, like
was,
right outside of Trinidad, there is Pikes Peak,
yeah,
and it's just like this huge, formidable mountain, and it's just like, what the heck? It's like, it's completely. I mean, our sense of mountains. We grew up here in the Northeast in New England. We're in the heart of Appalachia. And Appalachian mountains are kind of pathetic when it comes to these mountains. I know, granted, it's just because of the fact that they probably looked like that at one point in time, but they've weathered over the millions of years. But these mountains were just incredible, and it makes me really look forward to going out and visiting Colorado in the relatively near future. I'm going to have some opportunities to head out there even before chase season, or maybe at some point in 2022, I'll be out there. Not for chasing, so I'm going to definitely be excited to explore there a little bit more. Moving forward, May 20th was the next day, which looked like it was supposed to be a pretty good day. If I'm remembering correctly, it was going to be, somewhere along the northeastern Colorado corridor, up near the not Texas Panhandle, the Nebraska Panhandle, and it looked very promising on the model runs, and originally it didn't pan out that way. And actually, funny story, we should probably get into this. Something that we want to talk about is I don't know if you remember this as much, Connor, but we were exploring Denver and we were there for lunch, just kind of checking out the city a little bit since the setup was looking to be later that afternoon. And we're checking out Denver, and we hop in the car to get towards our target area for the day. And we had a nice little dash light come up on the car.
Oh yeah, the oil warning light.
We had a low oil warning, and if you know Subarus, they're notorious for consuming more oil than most cars, and especially after driving it. At this point, we probably almost covered 3,000 miles in a couple day span. So
we basically went like distance-wise transcontinental.
Yeah. So the car, we came on, and we were very fortunate that we were in Denver. That means we went. I was prepared for a lot of car scenarios. I had like a tire plug kit. I had coolant. I had all these different, and windshield wiper fluid, and all the typical things. But the one thing I didn't have was motor oil, which is probably like the first thing you should have when it comes to that kind of trip. And it was like, oh, like, come on. And so, but fortunately we were in Denver, so there was an AutoZone or, some auto store not far from where we were, probably about a mile or two away. Went there, got some 0-weight-20, which is super thin oil. I didn't realize how thin the oil was because I hadn't changed the oil in that car yet since I had just pretty much gotten it in March. So I didn't realize that it was like a super lightweight oil that this car was running. So, good learning experience ultimately, but I'm glad I wasn't in the middle of nowhere, Texas, with a supercell bearing down on me with that kind of warning light coming on. The last thing I want. So nonetheless, we sorted out that issue, and we continued out to our target area in the Pawnee Grasslands, which was a super cool place, just, very flat and very just green and picturesque kind of part of Colorado. And, you don't really see the mountains or anything anymore. It's pretty far east, but it's just like a very, peaceful environment, I'd say.
I mean, yeah, it's a national grassland, a protected area, so there's no farm equipment anywhere nearby. There's no like developed land nearby. It is literally probably like 3 rows cross it.
Yeah,
you probably like 3 paved roads, and there's like a whole bunch of cutoffs where you can just like sit at like a top of like a small hill, and you can just observe the storm that's going on for however many miles it takes for.
Yeah, so we got out there, and the early stuff kind of struggled. Didn't really develop into any supercells or anything. Well, I guess you could say they were supercells, but then they just didn't reach that next level. Like, they would blow up and then kind of look pretty good for about, 2 or 3 radar scans, and then they would just completely fall apart. The environment was pretty choked out in the upper levels, so they weren't able to kind of punch through that cap as strong as, a much more prevalent supercell would do. So whatever, it kind of looked like the day wasn't going to end up that well. And then everything just then there was, the low level jet kicked in right around dusk time. And then all the storms kind of blew up and it turned into kind of a big, convective mess essentially. But it turned it out being very beautiful in the sense that, so we crossed the Colorado border into Nebraska, and eventually the storm kind of overtook us, had some winds and some hail with it. Nothing too crazy. And then we somehow snaked our way back into Colorado and then started punching through the storm to get to the backside because, we had this big whale's mouth overtake us as we were on this north-south road, and we just figured that there's no way that we're going to be able to get in front of it to see the big shelf cloud, which a lot of people saw. So we decided to punch back west as this thing was moving east, and we, had our first real experience with real muddy dirt roads.
Yeah, I think we had a little bit in Texas with the nice red clay mud for a little bit, but
yeah,
that was the first real long drive through mud was definitely in the Nebraska Panhandle through the remnants, or not really remnants, the aftermath of I would say a semi-substantial MCS.
Yeah, it was a big squall line, almost style storm. It was a big, I guess you could say MCS. So we get through and, the road is just, it was kind of like this gravelly, I don't know what it was.
It was gravel mixed with mud, basically.
Yeah, so it was pretty slick. Connor did a great job handling down the driving side of it, just kind of sticking to the higher revved gears and just kind of letting the torque let the wheels do the torque, I guess you could say. Or what am I trying to say here? Let the car torque itself through the mud. We didn't really have any fears of getting stuck. It was more just a matter of maintaining and staying on the road because, you could feel the back end drift a little bit, if depending on the way the road is, laid out, there's kind of like a center mound and it kind of slopes down on either side. So if you don't maintain on that center mound, you can kind of start drifting off to one side. So we just pretty much stuck to the middle of the road, made our way down there, and I kind of glanced out my side view mirror on the passenger side, and I just saw the end of a rainbow. I rolled down the window because the precipitation had ceased at this point. So we had, we had the sun, kind of setting or starting to set, kind of blinding us. And we just kind of turned around and there was just this giant double rainbow with Mamadas over us. It was just the craziest thing. Connor was focused on driving, got us to our paved road, and we just kind of pulled over and I took this shot on the side of the road there. And it was just, the Mamadas and this MCS storm just starting to move off. And the colors just were I don't know. It was one of my favorite photos of the trip. I think I'm going to get it made up. It's not like it's a great structure shot or anything. It was just, very visually beautiful.
Yeah, you got the greens at the bottom. You got the white Mamadas clouds at the top. You got the rainbow, covering it all.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just you know what? I'm going to make it the episode title cover right now. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or somewhere else that has the individual episode cover, look at that picture and that's what we were talking about. And the road, there was not a single car on the road. There might have been one in the very distance, but nonetheless it was just this perfect shot, and it just really resonated with me after the fact. It was just a very beautiful picture. And it's I don't consider myself a photographer. I can just dial in the settings. I know what to do with aperture and ISO and all that stuff. I know what to do with that, but I don't know how to tweak it in such a way to make it look a certain way. I know that really good photographers, they can, dial in their aperture and really, bring out the emotion of the storm. And of course, editing also does a little bit of that too in Lightroom, but I'm not that experienced I'm a video guy first. I started making videos when I was real young, pre-YouTube, well, maybe not like YouTube existed, but I was making videos before I started doing stuff on YouTube, like 2008, 2009. So I've always been a video guy first, but to take that shot was just really, you know, it was really powerful for me to kind of have this moment.
It was the transition between videography and stepping into photography for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess you could say
Making
that.
yourself a well-rounded chaser.
Yeah, so I definitely don't mind taking pictures. I love taking pictures while chasing, but, you know, I'm a video first kind of guy at the end of the day. So that kind of wrapped up that part of the storm, and we started driving back, and we realized that there was kind of this post-frontal or post-storm kind of convection taking place behind the main line. And then we were watching this tail end Charlie part of the storm ahead of us that went past us already. But behind us, there ended up being this low precipitation kind of supercell with this low level jet kind of keeping it flowing. And, you know, we rounded out the night with this beautiful time lapse of, I mean, it was just an iPhone time lapse because I didn't have time to set everything up because I wanted to capture it. But I just had my iPhone rolling the time lapse of this cool LP supercell just gliding off into the night. And it was really, really cool to kind of watch it. It was pumping a lot of lightning, and we just had this very surreal moment of just kind of sitting there and watching this storm for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, that was, you've pretty much encapsulated that experience. It was, you know, a little bit sublime and like a little bit surreal.
We were just taking it in.
Yeah, taking it in.
Yeah. So then the next day was May 21st, which, you know, once again, kind of similar looking setup, it seemed, you know, high plane style setup. And this day was an actual bus day. It was a little bit too capped. And we were up in Sydney, Nebraska for this event. And, you know, it just didn't pan out. Every storm that went up struggled, died. And then another one would come up, struggled, died. And it just, like, you know, pretty early into the day, everyone kind of realized that this was going to be the tune of the day. So dusk time rolled around, and once again, we found ourselves at Applebee's. This time with a lot more chasers, and there were a lot of notable names there. And it was really cool to kind of sit down and meet a lot of people and just have a good time. Even if the storms didn't pan out the way we wanted them to, you know, we still enjoyed the evening. I was watching playoff hockey. So, you know, I was happy in my little zone and interacting with the great people that were around us. And it was, once again, you know, everybody loves storms and stuff, but it is a really great communal experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, that was a really great part of the storm chasing experience. And as I said before, it's really solidified me into storm chasing, just having a whole community of people, basically almost like 75% filling up an Applebee's of storm chasers, just, you know, interacting with each other and, you know, talking about something that we all really love to do. I mean, that's crazy, and I love it.
Yeah, so we retired for the night, and then came May 22nd, which was probably the most promising looking day of the trip thus far. In terms of, I mean, you could argue that May 17th was, but we weren't really down there in time for that, however you want to look at it. But nonetheless, May 22nd, Connor's birthday, actually. So it looked really promising. We woke up in Sydney, Nebraska, and made our way south towards Yuma, Colorado. And when we were driving down there, I mean, we were behind the warm front. Or I'm trying to remember the setup. I think we were behind the warm front, and it was just like dark and gloomy. And then eventually we punched through the warm front toward going down towards Yuma, and, you know, everything was heating up. You know, we were watching just like little cumulus bubbles, like a cumulus field, and it just looked like a tornado day from the videos that I'd seen in the past of, you know, right before a big tornado event. It just felt like a tornado day. So we get down towards Yuma, and this is where I'm kind of having a little bit of predicament within myself as a forecaster, because it almost looked like further south we could have, you know, played the Palmer Divide, which is a great geographical feature for inducing tornadoes and supercells because of the natural spin that it provides. So we figured that, you know, maybe we could push a little bit south, but it was around lunchtime. We were hungry, stopped in Yuma to get some food. And then we started heading west, and storms were already blowing up to our west.
Yeah, the initiation was super fast, and things went from basically 0 to 100 like incredibly quickly, like within the span of 30 minutes.
Yeah, we went from, having cumulus towers to not even like, barely a blip on radar to tornado warned supercell in 20 to 30 minutes. It was the fastest development that I had ever seen of a supercell in that sense. And, we just figured, okay, well, this storm's here. Let's go chase it. So we blasted a little bit west towards the town of Akron. And this is where I made the decision. I should have judged the situation. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, but given the way how fast things blew up, I mean, this is like 1 o'clock. Like, usually you're thinking, storms are firing off at like 3, 4 p.m. or whatever. But it's 1 o'clock. The action's happening now. And we got to the center of Akron, and it was either continue west on this option or head north. And the storm felt as though that it was already starting to cross the road about, I'd say, 5 miles to our west. So I figured, what's the point in going west when I can go north and kind of parallel it and then cut it off, a little bit further up ahead? There's no way it's going to produce a tornado right about now. And ultimately, we went north. So we're driving north, paralleling the storm, getting a little bit ahead of it to kind of give us some breathing room, when we kind of, I don't know if it was you or me that instinctually kind of looked over to kind of look at the base of it.
I think it was me, because I don't know exactly what I was doing, because it was off the driver's side, and I think it caught my periphery a little bit. So I looked over, and I just see the needle touching down.
Yeah, it was like this, big rope style tornado. I guess not really big. It was, skinny tornado, but it was a very picturesque tornado, that's for sure. And, Connor must have mentioned that there was a tornado or something on the ground. He saw something, funnel cloud, whatever. I turn around and identify that, yeah, there's something on the ground. And where we were, so if the tornado was 2 hours southwest, so we were northeast of the I guess you could say the updraft base, tornado, mesocyclone, whatever. And we're continuing north, going away from it. So Connor initiates a 3-point turn. We kind of scrambled to get back a little bit enough south to the point where we can kind of, get a better view of this thing, given how far north we've gotten, the ground we've gained on this storm. I have my normal 18 to... I had what lens I have on my 18 to 55, just standard kit lens on my DSLR or my 90D, which I wanted to get video of because, like I said, I'm a video first guy. Didn't even think to pick up my T5i, which had a 18 by 135 lens on it, which I could have definitely zoomed in and got a shot of. So I swap out the lenses on my video camera for my telephoto lens, which is like a 135 by 300. I'm sorry if you're not a photographer, whatever. Long zoom lens. So I switch out the lenses, get the video camera up and ready to roll, hit record, and this thing is just roping out into 2 pieces. I'm watching the top end of it go back up into the storm, and then the southern end just kind of whittle to the ground. And it's like, great, we missed the first tornado. So we continue south, back into Akron, head west for the trailing storm, because the other storm just kind of got absorbed and whatever, So there was a trailing storm that was looking tornadic, and we got right under its meso. There was probably about, a 5-minute period that it was tightening up, about to produce a tornado, and then all of a sudden this updraft base just gets cut off and dies.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Just the sheer suddenness of it, just it was funnel, you can see the funnel needling down. It was about to happen. You were about to see a ground circulation, and then you can see the updraft base just disintegrate in front of your eyes. And seeing the first tornado, missing the first tornado, that was just a shock and just almost a punch in the gut. Yeah, exactly. It kind of left us staggered off the bat.
Just kind of storms blowing up. We scrambled, made our decisions, and we saw the tornado, but just didn't get it in the viewfinder. And then this storm struggles to put down a tornado the following storm. And then at this point, we just wanted redemption and got tunnel visioned on the storm that was somewhat more to the east, which had a great looking circulation to it. Looked really aggressive, but was definitely way high precipitation. No way we were ever going to see it, and it was moving at 45 knots, and there was no way we were going to catch up to it. But we got tunnel vision and tried to get as close as we could to it. Meanwhile, stuff started blowing up off the Palmer Divide further to our south. So after missing the Akron tornado, what we probably should have done was raced south. But we got tunnel visioned on this storm, and whatever. Ultimately, the Pumpkin Setters tornado happens, which is one of the better tornadoes of the year. Beautiful collar cloud around it, and not many chasers I mean, most of the chasers that I know were on the northern stuff, like where we were at with the Akron tornado. And then ultimately the show of the day, I would have argued the better tornado of the day was the Pumpkin Center storm to the further south.
I would say definitely yes. That was I would say semi-photogenic stovepipe.
Oh yeah, it was a big stovepipe. So, whatever. We've definitely learned our lesson that day. Trust targets and stuff like that. And, kind of think in the moment when it comes to these fast blowing up storms. So we learned our lesson. We celebrated Connor's birthday later that day with, a good steak dinner at a steakhouse in Fort Morgan, Colorado. This steakhouse was attached to a gas station, something I had never seen before. And the menu was just 5 different cuts of steak, essentially.
Yeah, and you got a baked potato, and there was one kind of cake for the dessert option for my birthday. So, yeah, definitely a limited selection, but that was a good steak. Considering that it was probably prepared locally in...
Yeah, the cow was probably killed that day. Who knows? So... we had a nice steak dinner and a lot of chasers around to celebrate Connor's birthday, which was really nice. And then the next day was May 23rd, which on paper looked like the best day once again. Like, it was an overnight kind of, the ingredients scaled up. Looked like it was going to be, once again, eastern Colorado, western Kansas. And there was kind of 2 targets where there was where we were in Akron, or where, the further northeastern Colorado along... what's the interstate there? I-76.
It's either 76 or 74. I'll check that real quick.
Yeah, the east-west highway that runs through northeastern Colorado, kind of on an angle, where Fort Morgan, Sterling, all those cities are along. So there was the target up there, and then there was a later target further south, close, right along near Burlington, Colorado, which is along the near Goodland, Kansas, which is in the northwestern corner of Kansas. So that looked like it was going to be a more discreet setup that day, so we decided to head down that way. So we driving down western Colorado, and the northern target off that Palmer Divide, storm blows up off the Palmer, and, it ended up being somewhat of a cyclic supercell, producing tornado after tornado, but there was heavy chaser traffic and overall grungy, fast-moving storm. So we didn't chase that storm, and we wanted to play the later stuff that day. So there were multiple tornadoes up there, once again near Akron, but like I said, it was our choice to play the more discreet setup later in the day.
Yeah, so a whole bunch of other storm chasers were considering that option as well. They probably also learned of the huge clutter and convergence of storm chasers earlier that day, and they just learned to stay near the very eastern end of Colorado and, wait for the main show to occur.
Yep.
Because models were saying that it was definitely going to blow up there.
Yep. So what we did is we were in Seabird, Colorado for a while. We were hanging out with a bunch of other chasers along this southern target. There are a lot of notable chasers there, and met a bunch of people, talked. I know there were a lot of the Colorado chasers, and the University of Illinois chase group was out there. We saw Skip Talbot, Pico's Hank, or I should say Hank Shima, his actual name, and the Simons. There was a lot of notable people there, so it instilled confidence in us that, we were on the right target. we were watching blips on radar for a while. They'd blow up, or like you would get like a start of a thunderstorm and then it would die. It was a lot of that for like an hour or two. And eventually we moved a little bit more east to Burlington, Colorado. And then eventually the first real supercell took hold. And that was, we decided to target it and go for it. Ended up going tornado warned. And kind of after that, everything started kind of blowing up and everything just kind of went upscale essentially.
Yeah, that was basically what happened. It definitely broke, and then, like, of course, you got your initial supercells after that. I think during that chase, we definitely were basically close to a mesocyclone, and we saw, like, some horizontal vortex and some inflow or something. That was a pretty interesting experience to see. But after that, it turned into an MCS. That was basically the end of that chase.
And ultimately the end of the chasecation.
Yeah, that was basically it. But funny story out of May 23rd, we were tackling a lot of the unpaved road grid again that day, and there was a single truck on top of a hill, and we were taking a look and just like, hey, what is that truck doing on top of that hill? And once we crested that hill, we just saw, like, at the bottom of the hill, like a small valley, that unpaved road grid was just a lake. Yeah. Basically, there was just puddles everywhere. Like, you could see that it was just going to be mud, and we could have gotten ourselves stuck, like, instantly. So we just immediately banged the car around after we just saw the valley, and we're just like, yeah, not that direction.
Yeah. So, because we're just like looking at like, what's that truck doing there? Like, why is he just sitting there? We crest the hill, and it's just like and it's literally like a lake at the bottom of the road, and it's like, well, turn around. So yeah, it was a definitely tricky situation in terms of a lot of unpaved roads and not the most abundant road options. So it was a somewhat tricky situation, but we tried to make the most of it, and we made the right calls essentially. Just, the storms didn't cooperate. So we made the trek back to Western Massachusetts, and then not long after that, we had a chase day on May 26th, which was not bad. Or no, it was pretty bad. Originally, it was bad. It looked like it was going to be a lot better, and then the storms didn't cooperate, but we got a nice shelf cloud close to home. Whatever. But one thing I want to mention is that the day we left the 23rd, and we had to leave because of commitments not long after. And May 24th ultimately was an exciting day, but this was the Selden, Kansas day. I imagine you've seen videos of that if you are involved. If not, I highly recommend the Tornado Trackers video of the Selden, Kansas day. They got the best footage, arguably, of that day. Some really good 4K stuff, seeing the real tight circulation at the bottom. Like, you could really pick out the individual details of the tornado. Absolutely stunning footage. So check that out if you can. But the problem with that day is that this was off of a northern boundary when most people played the southern storms. There was also the incredible supercell that happened early in that morning, the Colby storm, which was just an absolute mothership UFO-looking storm. Crazy-looking supercell, probably the best structured supercell of the year by far. And then ultimately the Selden storm later in the day, and the southern storms didn't cooperate, and most people were kind of left with a sour taste. So I'm almost glad I wasn't there, because I feel like I wouldn't have been paying attention to surface observations, and I would have kind of just gone with the idea of, oh, let's play the southern storm. That's always like the idea in your head, because, the northern storm, it's going to get choked, and you want the one with unimpeded flow. But because of that boundary lifting further to the north, the Selden storm ended up being the tornado of the day.
Yeah, that's basically what happened meteorologically. And what we were doing is basically we were at the eastern end of Missouri at around 10 a.m. where we found pictures of the Colby supercell, of that mothership and that superstructure. And once we were in northern Colorado, Ohio. Once we were in northern Ohio, we saw footage of Selden, and we did not want to leave on the 23rd after that. We wanted to stay after that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess you could say. And it was funny because each day, it always looked like the next day, like that night, it would be like, oh, the next day looks bad. and like it doesn't look like it's going to be good for the next couple of days, and then all like it would blow up. Like literally that morning things would look good. So that's, you know, the kind of the adage of when it's May you chase. And I think that's something that we learned, that no matter whatever the setup's going to be, like, you know, if as long as you have some sort of trough and wind to work with, the moisture is probably going to be there and you're going to get storms. So when it's May you chase, and you can't be relying so much on long-term forecasts, and you kind of just have to take it day by day and go from there. I mean, obviously you're going to have days that are more obvious than others, but when in doubt, you chase. So this is now getting into the point where we had some opportunities in the Northeast. Most notable probably was not long after the end of our chasecation, June 3rd, which synoptically speaking wasn't supposed to be much of an event. But honestly, this is one of my most proudest moments of the season and one of my proudest forecasting moments of my storm chasing career, I guess you could say. Along the line, like August 2nd, 2020, I've talked about it before with Eric Creighton and Colton Flint. But that was a really cool setup. LP supercell, photogenic, you know, weak tornado, cyclical supercell in the Northeast. That's always cool. But with this setup, it just, you know, the tornado parameters were in this very localized area. These storms weren't supposed to be anything severe. It was in a marginal risk in central New York. But that night, I just kept seeing trends across all the models that suggested a localized parameter space for tornadoes the next day. So we got up and I said, Connor, the obvious target that day was like in Pennsylvania. It was going to be a linear style setup across eastern Pennsylvania. There was like a slight risk there, wind-driven risk, but there was still this, you know, 2% tornado risk for majority of the area reaching up into New York. And I said, I know what I want to do here. The models are all in agreement. You know, when you see like multiple model runs agreeing with the same parameter space, and, you know, you're getting the same ingredients, and then you're getting multiple models, not just like, so like the NAM, the 3 kilometer NAM and the HER and the HREF, they were all agreeing with each other in terms of this parameter space. So it just made sense to go to this spot in just north of Utica. So we head north, and there was a storm complex that kind of developed, or a convective setup. It wasn't even storms at that point, that came off of the Great Lakes near Oswego. And we kind of just sat and waited for this storm to get closer to us.
Yeah, I think we were by like the eastern end of the Finger Lakes, like near Oneida Lake. I believe that's where the geographical location was, waiting for the storms to start to fire up, as you probably saw in the models. And we waited for about an hour, and then we finally started to see convection going on. And so we started to begin chase mode there. So we pulled off into like some county road, and we pictured one supercell at first.
Well, I don't even know if it was really a supercell
at that point. Not really a
point.
supercell. Like, yeah, some
it wasn't,
storm.
It was like, it was a storm that just had like a look to it. Like there was like a subtle radar, like it was putting out lightning every so often, not super, like that's what was telling to me. It was a tail end Charlie kind of storm, I guess you could say. It was on the southern end of this complex, and it just had a look to it. I sent the drone up when we were near this town of Camden, New York. Okay, yeah, and there was a farm field, so we were able to kind of watch it for a bit, and we kind of sat there for a while. I sent the drone up, and it just had like a nice, it had inflow band coming into the base of it, and it just started looking super cellular. And it just, you know, we kept going with it, and we had some fields to work with, and then eventually we got to this point near Ava / Lee, New York, and another field opening, and I, you know, was rolling on the ground, and it was hard to see, but there was a lot of precipitation near the base, but it was clearly churning. Like there was motion within the storm,
yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely see left to right motion going on with this rain bands in this basically high precipitation storm.
Yeah. So we were watching it, you know, it's churning at the base. I send the drone up, And next thing it's starting to I get the drone up for a couple seconds, get about 30 seconds of footage of it, bring the drone down. And luckily I had my camera in a good spot where it saw, the entire tornado essentially. And in those rain bands was a rain wrapped EF1 tornado. And it was crazy because, had no idea at the time. Like, we knew that it was circulating, but it was hard to tell from where we were whether or not this storm was actually putting a tornado on the ground. So we moved up the road a little bit to get, a little more breathing room to another field. I snap a picture of this, basically an RFD shelf, and kind of just tweeted out a quick picture saying rapid motion with this storm, may or may not have just witnessed a tornado, given radar presentation and all that. So I sent out this tweet of this big shelf cloud, rain, and I'm getting blown up on Twitter for posting a picture of a shelf cloud, and everyone's like, that is not a tornado, sir. And I was like, but inside that rain that you can't really see through right now, we saw something that resembled a tornado. And radar suggests, there was a quick, tightening of a couplet and a drop in correlation coefficient, which basically means, so your correlation coefficient, if you're not aware, is something that the radar, it's differentiating what particles are in the air and the uniformity of it. So if you have something that's uniform, it's going to be give you a value of 1, and if it's not uniform, it's going to give you a value of 0, and it's somewhere in between there. And when you get debris, you're getting stuff of all different sizes that the radar's picking up. So basically, you're getting close to 0, and you can see that correlation drop, as we call it, resembling a tornadic debris signature, or a TDS. So there was a very brief TDS, maybe lasted 2 or 3 scans, if that, and the tightening of the couplet and what we saw on the ground indicated us that we saw a potential tornado. Meanwhile, I'm getting shredded online for posting a picture of a shelf cloud, even though I'm trying to, in the moment, I just sent a tweet just to give out my observation because I felt as though that it was important. But I didn't fully describe the situation at hand from what we were seeing, which is kind of a limitation of tweets at the end of the day because you can only have 280 characters to work with. So
yeah, the wording was definitely subpar for the situation that we were in. I do have to admit that. You said, I believe, if I remember correctly, it said tornado in the storm, somewhere along those lines, and you was very general posting, and you posted the picture of the shelf cloud.
Yeah, I was riding the adrenaline high at that point because this storm was rapidly closing in on us.
Yeah, and this storm, visually speaking, it wasn't very supercellular. You couldn't see a defined updraft base. There wasn't a lot of lightning with it.
It wasn't probably a proper supercell at the end of the day. It was kind of just this, because it didn't have the something like the Echo Tops weren't even exceeding 30,000 feet. They were 20,000 feet, storm height, which is not that tall for a storm.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there was barely any lightning, which would consider a strong updraft that would make a tornado, and that led to the National Weather Service kind of
brushing us off.
Yeah, a little
essentially. Kudos to the National Weather Service broadcasters at National Weather Service Binghamton, but I have no beef with you. But you shrugged us aside that day. I'm a trained spotter. I know what I saw, and I'm sticking to my guns. Anyway, so nonetheless, we start our trek back home after this encounter with the storm, and I'm looking at the footage on my computer. I just have my laptop in my lap, kind of looking over the footage, and I boost the contrast on the video camera and the drone footage, and it is clear as day to me that the footage we saw, a tornado of some sort. So I ended up tweeting it out, and I said, this is what I'm talking about. People started retweeting it, and I was kind of, forgiven of my sins, I guess you could say, of posting a shelf cloud. And then we get reports of damage that took place in Lee. There was a barn that was hit, and it ultimately killed a couple cows, I'm pretty sure, which is rather unfortunate for the farmer and the poor cows, obviously. But It was like, oh. And then National Weather Service Binghamton sent out a survey team and ultimately a day later confirmed an EF1 tornado in Lee, New York. And we were the ones to see it and document it. And I got to say, it was, like I said, it was a very localized parameter space. There was a lot of shear and surface-based CAPE to prevent that, or no, not to prevent it, but to support the other word, the opposite word, to support a tornado. And it ultimately did. Yes, was the setup probably lackluster? Yes. Not a bullseye by any means, but if you look at the right ingredients, you can sometimes, and the trends, obviously, it's never just the ingredients, but it's the trends that you're seeing across models, that there was ultimately a tornado. So, and we were the only ones to document it, and it was a pretty vilifying feeling.
Yeah, that was definitely a moment that I don't know how to describe it essentially, but basically where we just made a good call and we were just spotting out. And definitely it was not an ideal situation to spot, and definitely there was some merit in anybody to disregard what we were saying, definitely because of what we said and the conditions at the time. So, like, I'm not disrespecting anybody here, but yeah, that's basically what happened, and we made a good call, and we got the storm.
Yeah, and I said vilifying. That's not what I meant to say. Did you catch that?
Oh, I did.
I said, like, it was a very vilifying feeling. I meant to say, like, it was a very, like, verifying feeling to me, to, like, that I do have, like, decent forecast skills after a couple of rough chases in the plains and on the 26th that I was talking about briefly there. So, it kind of reinforced in me that I do know what I'm doing and all that. So, great. And June 3rd ended up being probably like one of my favorite days of the year just because of that. It was just a really great success in my mind in order to kind of, forecast this event, like I said. Moving forward, then we had a very interesting day up once again in Vermont on June 21st, an enhanced risk day, which ultimately probably didn't pan out for us in the sense that we thought it was going to. The night before, it looked like there was going to be almost a tornado outbreak or a supercell outbreak of sorts based on model guidance in northern Vermont. And that did happen just about 200 miles further, or maybe about 100 miles further north in Canada. And at the time, the border was still closed and we could not trespass into Canada. So we missed out on a tornado fest in Ontario and Quebec. End of the day. We had some stuff to play with further south, but it was not to the caliber that we were expecting, basically.
Yeah, that was basically what happened meteorologically, and also the terrain as well. It did not happen in the farm fields of Vermont. That happened basically on the border of the Green Mountains, essentially. And any storm that we really saw began to occlude itself visually with the Green Mountains. And I remember this one shot of a pretty, I want to say call it an updraft base, but a pretty decent storm structure, and you could just see the mountain just begin to
obscure it.
Yeah, obscure it visually, and that was an annoying experience. So yeah, that was, I don't know how to put that into one adjective, but yeah,
frustrating.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and then I had a couple local chase days here in Western Massachusetts, and June 30th, July 6th, just getting out of work and heading over to a very open spot near my work that I like to time-lapse storms from. One of my favorite spots in Western Massachusetts to observe storms. So, it's always nice just to, get out of work and just enjoy some summertime storms. A lot of them achieve severe status, not really much tornado potential, but it was just, kind of enjoying. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. You don't have to see these big, crazy storms. If you're someone that enjoys severe weather or weather in general, you can always appreciate just a garden variety summertime storm, I guess you could say, to use the words of Andrew Pritchard. And then, let's see, August 22nd was a tropical storm chase. I probably should also mention, too, that I drove through Tropical Storm Elsa in Delaware. I was going there in early July, and I slept through a tornado warning literally right over me because I was so tired. But in Lewis, Delaware. But
It happens.
it's gonna happen. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and I literally slept through the tornado warning. Like both, like everyone's phones went off and I missed it. So whatever. I just thought that was funny and should have mentioned it. So.
Well, you mentioned it.
Yeah, I did. That was back in early July. So once again, August 22nd, Hurricane Henri downgraded to tropical storm before landfall, and ultimately was kind of somewhat of a bust in terms of what people thought was going to happen. Because people really, I don't know. I guess people like the strengthening of hurricanes and stuff, but I guess New England, we haven't had a hurricane in 30 years, so people really wanted to have another New England hurricane. It ended up being Isaias, or no, wow, that was last year. Ida, and it's not Isaias, it's I can't even say it right.
Isaias?
Yeah, I think that's the way you're supposed to say it.
But that was last year, so.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say it right. Ida ended up being a lot more devastating for the Northeast, which I did not chase. And I ultimately regret. I was really close to taking the day off to chase, and we missed like the Molucca Hill tornado in southern Jersey and a bunch of other tornadoes, which is whatever. I'm not losing sleep over it now, but in the moment I was pretty upset because I wrote it off because it's a tropical setup. It's tough to chase tropical tornado setups, and the other thing is that I wouldn't have probably been able to get home either. So.
And you also didn't have me to help you because that was, I think...
It was in September. You were at school.
I was definitely at school, and I believe that was like the first exam time of the semester, so...
So Connor was out for the count.
I was definitely out for the count. Could not skip exam day.
Yeah, and then we had a couple more setups in September. There was another kind of late season style setup. Connor wasn't there for that one either. But, it was just... Oh, where was it? September 15th. That was... Oh, I'm blanking right now. I'm going to have to look real quick. I'm now looking at the photos from Mayfield. Oh, yes, northern Massachusetts. Yeah, so that was northwestern Massachusetts, just kind of watching some storms. Nothing too spectacular. It was cool getting storms near Mount Greylock, which is the tallest peak in Massachusetts. So that was pretty cool, watching the storms roll over the mountain. So there was that. And then there was October 13th, which ended up being a kind of a tornado outbreak in the sense across Long Island and southern Connecticut. So I played Western Connecticut that day and saw some cool undulatus asperatus, which is a really cool cloud format. And then almost got struck by lightning in the car. But... besides that kind of wrapped up the chase year in terms of notable chases, but we had a bunch of others in between that aren't really of note, I guess you could say. If you want to see more of these chases, by the way, the end of year video I released a couple of days ago on the June 1st channel titled The 2021 Storm Observation Season. On the June 1st channel, like I said, you can look at all these raw footage from those events, the highlights, I guess you could say, of those events. Not really, no commentary really, just kind of putting it out there as it is, and you can go watch it on the June 1st YouTube channel. Connor, do you have anything else you want to add about this chase season?
Not really. That basically described everything. Yeah, go watch the video if you want to have some supplementary footage to what we are saying in this podcast.
It'll be in the show notes. As the Tornado Trackers put it. They say show notes. I guess we could call it description.
Yeah.
Tornado Trackers, if you're listening to this, I'd love to have you on the podcast. Maybe an episode down the line eventually. You know what? Maybe I have to have them all on one at a time. Expose them. Not expose them but no, get to know more of the individual rather than the group as the Tornado Trackers. I know they're a complete unit in the sense that it's the three of them, but they're one of the tops in the podcasting and documentary game in terms of severe weather, so I'd love the chance to get to talk to them. So maybe one day.
Maybe one podcast has a group of them and then one for each of them individually.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Get some episodes on.
Yeah, so with that said, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and kind of recapping with us. I hope you maybe, if you're a chaser, share some of the experiences that we do. Finding some crossings in terms of what happened on some of the days in the plains if you're a plains chaser. And if you're a Northeast chaser, I'm sorry. I'll apologize right up front for that. But nonetheless, I'm kidding. We all love a good storm here and there. So once again, thank you, Connor, for joining me on the podcast and your first time as the co-host. I know I talk a lot, but I feel like you add some very good insight a lot of the time. So I want to thank you for stepping up to the plate and becoming the co-host of the June 1st podcast.
Thank you very much for the promotion as well and having me on the show. So, yeah, I know you would say a lot, but basically since we're experiencing the same thing, there's basically the same commentary that we're adding here. So it's understandable on like how I talk a little bit less than you. So
anyway, thank you, Connor. Do you want to do the social media plugs?
Sure. So June 1st, WX. So at GUN or JUNE. I said I was thinking of so at JUNEFIRST So that's at June 1st WX for our channel's Twitter platform. My personal platform at CMoriarty79 and my brother's personal platform at EMoriartyWX.
Those are all Twitter.
Those are all on Twitter. We basically do stuff on Twitter and YouTube, of course, which is June 1st, all spelled out. The first channel, though, would probably pop up if you search for it on YouTube.
Yep, it's the first channel result, and I think now officially the first result. There used to be like a Team Fortress 2 video that used to pop up before it, which is kind of annoying. But now the June 1st YouTube channel comes up first. So can't miss it. It's a little black and white tornado logo. So click there.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you so much for joining the June 1st podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.
Bye.